Sometimes life is yikes.
And that's okay. You're not alone. Welcome to Yikesland. Hi, guys, and welcome to Yikesland episode 34. That's not a good jingle. I'll leave it to our jingle. So for those of you who are watching us, you may see that we have brought our homework this time.
Yes.
That's because this is going to be an extra special time capsule episode.
That's right. Welcome to the time capsule episode, folks.
So we will go into a little bit more about why we're doing a time capsule episode and what that means to us in just a little bit. But we will be asking each other questions about how we feel right now, about the podcast, and all of that kind of stuff. And then we will bury it on the internet. So not really a good bury. I'm
gonna promote it so much.
And and then you guys can look at it anytime, but we won't look at it again until we check back in the future and kind of see how things have changed or not changed for us.
Oh yeah.
So we're pretty excited.
I'm really
to
excited
do
about
that.
this episode.
Yeah, it's like when people used to do do you remember those MySpace surveys?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, it's like having access to those. I'm really sad that I can't see any of my MySpace surveys anymore.
Yeah, I'm really sad that
my time capsule is
I don't even know what my MySpace looked like.
Oh. Anyway, we are so happy that you guys are here with us on another glorious Tuesday. We would love for you to reach out to us on Twitter or Facebook. You can also reach us at Instagram at Yikesland_podcast or shoot us an email at yikesland@gmail.com. If you guys have more questions after the podcast that we could answer and expand upon our snapshot of this moment in time, that would be fun. And maybe if you guys come up with a lot of questions, we would be happy to do another episode or a mini-sode where we're answering all of those for you.
Yeah, one of these days I want to do like a viewer mail, guys. So send in those questions, guys. I want to do a viewer mail episode.
Like, what's up with her hair? But we are happy to hear from you guys. We love, hearing from people in the community, feeling like people are here with us in Yikesland, because we definitely want you guys to feel like you're not alone and like we are here with you. Jelani, you are not alone.
Kris,
I am here with you.
I'm here with you as well.
And that's not a mantra that we really say to each other all the time in secret, although that really made it seem like it.
It did. It seemed like we were on the same page. It's almost as if we've been doing this for 34 episodes.
Like we call each other in the middle of the night and whisper, "You are not alone.
You're not alone."
ASMR. But we're really happy to be here with you guys again. We're excited to start our homework. But first, Jelani, I will start this episode off like we always do with a quick little "How are you?"
Listen. When we talked about it before, we said this was the one question you weren't going to ask on this survey. Just run off.
Throws table.
No. I'm doing okay. In the past recent few episodes, I've told you guys that I've been feeling kind of a little bit more steady than I normally have been, like really off kilter. I've been doing my little walk stuff, staying active. I kind of slouched a little bit in the past week, but hey, you know what? I'm going to get back onto it. But I feel like I've been accomplishing a lot more stuff than I've been focused on doing more stuff for the streaming network here and working on some cool little side projects. I mean, and there's some cool stuff. I feel like I'm trying to do more, and so like that's great. I think in my mind where like I'm okay, you know what, I'm not just dissolving into my couch. I'm being more active. I'm trying to get out more, or I'm trying to do something and like actually like accomplish some things that I want to accomplish. So I feel like that's okay. Like I feel like I've been as steady as I can be at the moment. I still feel very exhausted, but that's okay. Just, that's the normal depression hitting me where it's like, oh, really would like to just lay on this couch. But I've been feeling okay. Couple personal things with like family has been like hitting me a little weird in a weird way, but I still feel like at this moment I've been kind of staying steady and like focused, really focused. So I'm kind of happy about that actually. So that's the great thing about it. I'm sure it'll all end soon. So yeah, how are you feeling?
I am bad in a personal way, but
No.
I think whenever that happens, I kind of like my reaction is kind of just like to compartmentalize stuff. And so unfortunately, like tragically, it makes me way better at work and friendships and like focusing on other things or focusing on like projects that I want to do in my life when things are going bad in like a personal way. So like, and I say tragically because then like I'm like, oh, that sucks, because if I want to be good in the other aspects of my life, then like things have to be going poorly in this one section of my life. I mean, and that's not really true. It's not that I can't ever focus on other stuff. But it really like is a thing where it is like a superpower that I didn't want, where like if stuff's going badly, I'll just lock in and be just like super good at everything else. But right now I am, some of the other things I'm focusing on in addition to my podcast homework right here are I get to, I have the honor of pet sitting for some friends.
That's good.
So I get to be around a cat who doesn't like me, and a dog who does like me, but dogs like everyone, but it's still really satisfying. So we've been going on walks, taking naps together, etc. And this was kind of a position that I begged for. Like, I feel like most of the time you have to ask your friends, like, hey, can you like take care of my animal? But I was like, hey, you're going out of town. Can I take care of your dog? Because I'm like all thirsty for dog interaction.
Oh, thirsty for that dog interaction.
But I miss my dog because he is a New Jerseyite right now. So it's nice to have that interaction, and it's also nice to have that as a bookend where it's the beginning and the end of your day. So we spent a couple hours together last night. And that was fun. And also like just that thing where they do studies and they're like, oh, people who interact with dogs are less sad and all of that. So all of those like good chemicals that you get from like looking in a dog's eyes and snuggling with it and like trying to do like sits and rollovers and all of that have been very rewarding. So I think that's the bright spot in my life right now, in addition to this horrible ability to focus that I have right now, which ordinarily I would love, but it's not really worth it.
Okay.
But I have a lot of hope for the future, so don't worry about me. I feel like things are always going to be okay.
Things are going to wax and wane. Yeah. I just hope, I hope you're doing all right.
I mean, I've already, I've already done what will probably, but not definitely, but probably be the worst things that will ever happen to me. So I feel like I'm golden now. And no, I mean, that doesn't mean that I could never fall into the Great Depression again. And I know that. But at the same time, I will never fall into the first Great Depression that I've ever had. So even if it happens again, I'll know what's happening this time. Okay. Rather than being like, whoa, what is this horrible darkness? I'll just be like, yes, we meet again, horrible darkness.
Okay. Well,
So yeah, I have hope, and I get to play with a dog. So
well, I'm glad that you have some doggo time, and know that we're all here with you in Yikesland. You're never alone.
Thank you.
Right. So, shall we get into what this episode is going to be?
Yes. All so right. I'm very excited. Jelani and I have been talking about doing this time capsule episode for a while, and it's something that we had to do some work ahead of time on. But I am, first of all, a sucker for doing those surveys that are like 10 questions about me. They are so much fun, and I'm so glad that I grew up during the exact period of the internet where those were in and socially acceptable and not embarrassing, so that I could grow up and one day do one of those on a podcast with my friend Jelani.
Yay!
But I think in the context of Yikesland, I think I'm excited to do this because our mental health journeys see so much change over time. And that doesn't mean that your path is going to be linear. It's definitely not. There are ups and downs and turnbacks and spin arounds and all of that. But things definitely change. And I think especially for people who are struggling with mental health issues, things are always changing, even if you feel kind of trapped, and I feel trapped a lot, so I know what that's like. Things are still kind of changing on the inside all the time. And so I think it's a really cool opportunity where we can sort of lock in how things feel at this point. And especially in terms of the context of the podcast and this project that we've embarked on and this journey that we've embarked on in Yikesland with all of you guys and in front of all of you guys, to kind of lock in a snapshot of what things are like for us right now on the inside and on the outside and with the podcast, so that later we can check in and see how things have changed. Not necessarily to be like, oh, I'm going to compare myself to old me and I better be better or else, but just like things will be different. And I think that's cool. And that's something that has always given me hope when I am having a mental health struggle, is like, no matter how hard things are right now, they're always going to be different in some way later. And so that's interesting to me, but that's this provides us kind of a cool way to like look back at it. That's a rap lyric from Raps. Yeah. Are you guys familiar?
Yes, you are a rapper now.
But it gives us a good opportunity to kind of look back later and see how things are different.
Yeah, I'm excited about this.
So pretty stoked.
Yes, this is really cool. I'm very interested in, like, there's going to be a big gap of space, and we're going to hopefully, like, by the time we get back around to it, like, not remember anything we had said. And so I'd be very interested to see how different our answers are in the different periods of time that we're going to be doing this.
I'm not worried about forgetting the questions because I will have forgotten them by tomorrow due to my memory issues. So don't you worry.
All right. So we're going to alternate back and forth between a set of questions that we have here, and then hopefully you guys enjoy it. So would you like to start off, or would you like me to start off?
I can start.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So my first question for you is, what is your biggest mental health challenge at the moment?
Biggest mental health challenge that I have right now. For me, I think the biggest mental health challenge that I go through right now is, there's actually two parts to it. The first part is being just having my like motivation and like my drive be totally like sapped from me. It's very hard for me to like, I have like that thing where it's like, oh, what is the point, but I'm currently working on it, but it's hard to get over this hurdle right now because of the state of mind that I'm in and everything that's going on. It's very hard for me to see the point of trying, but it's like I've just described this week. I feel like I'm making movements to get that better. And then the other thing that I'm trying to get over is kind of like the harsh social anxiety that I have right now, where it's like the world is just very loud, and like there are moments where just I get this emotion that just comes over me where it's like I can't, everything's just too much right now, and I feel like I'm trying to ground myself more in the world, and do more things to try and help me out with that. I have great friends, who are, that I'm around and like trying to be around. And so I think that's probably like my biggest things that I'm going through right now. I think that's the biggest thing I'm going through.
Okay.
Sure.
Thanks for
Would you like me to start yours?
All right. I'm excited.
I think I'm going to go with an easy one here. So what does the Yikesland mean to you?
So Yikesland, the word, and I'm going to answer this in two ways.
Yeah.
In the context of the podcast and also like the sort of the birth of the word. But to me, Yikesland, like the concept, is about the absurdity of depression or anxiety or other mental health struggles, and how like hilariously awful but nonsensical they are sometimes. And that's not to say that they're nonsensical so you like shouldn't feel bad. They're just like, sometimes you'll be having so much trouble doing something that yesterday was super easy for you, or that for other people is super easy. And like, but sometimes you'll be really good. So like it'll be like, I've had times in the past where it's really hard for me to take a shower. And that's like, for some people, the easiest thing in the world. And now at this point in my life, taking a shower is like fine and it's chill. But like, I remember so viscerally what it was like for that to be the hardest thing that I did all day. And so it kind of just, but I have other sort of like things that I've been calling superpowers now, that I have because of living in Yikesland, that are so hard for other people to get over. But for me, I'm like, this one's easy. I got this. And so it's just sort of that like upturning of what you think all the rules of life are going to be like, that make me feel like, oh, haha, we're living in such an absurd world. Like everything is ridiculous and everything is yikes. And the word yikes is like a little bit bad, but also a little bit silly. And those are kind of both of the things that I like wanted to bring into the word Yikesland, is that like everything's like, oh, whoa, I didn't expect that. But at the same time, you really start to expecting nothing. And I think that's kind of awesome. Like you kind of, in a certain way, you are ready for everything because you're ready for nothing. And the land part of it is just that even though you feel like you're living alone, when you meet and talk to other people, and this has happened with us, and this has happened with other friends, and especially through doing the podcast, you realize, oh my God, there's so many other people out here that are living in the exact same like brain hellscape that I am. So that's what Yikesland as a concept means to me. And then as a podcast, it's just kind of a really awesome opportunity for us to make a physical, I don't know if you'd call a podcast physical, but make basically a physical creation that's sort of us bringing you, like we always joke about, bringing you the views from Yikesland. Yeah. And it's like we're sitting in a tower in Yikesland and we're saying some stuff, like we're making some announcements and we're saying what we see and like basically telling you what the weather is like as far as our experience from this weather tower. Yeah. So that it's not everybody's experience, but it is something that a lot of people are feeling. And then it's this place that people can use as like a jumping off point to talk about, even if they agree or if they disagree, with many different issues with regards to mental health. And I think it's important because it serves to normalize. We've always talked about this, but serves to normalize talking about mental health issues. And we're certainly not the only ones out here that are doing this. And I appreciate so much the people that have come before us and the people that are still talking about this stuff. But I think that we still need more of it, and we still need more people, even recent experiences that we've talked about on the podcast make it clear that there's still stigma about a lot of all the small minutia of talking about mental health stuff. And so that's what is so meaningful to me about having Yikesland, the podcast, while we are living in Yikesland, the comical hellscape.
Yeah. Well, great. Well spoken. I will await my next question.
So, your next question.
Oh my.
Is, what do you think is the biggest thing that you have made progress with regards to mental health at this point in your life?
Biggest thing that I made progress with. I think I've made the most progress in the idea of helping myself not spiral. I think that because of the things that I've learned and the things we've discussed together and gone through with these episodes and learned from each other and just related to each other on these certain topics, I kind of was able to create like an idea of like how I want to try and take this rampaging bull I'm riding of like this whirlwind of mental health issues that I have and kind of try and like, it's still rampaging, but kind of steer it in a direction instead of like just letting it go wild. And so I think that's probably like, I think for me, like I've always had like a thing where I fell into like this routine, and I think breaking that routine and doing a couple things different and testing out different ideas of like how I should try and alter the way that I see things or do things has been a thing that I've really helped me progress in like helping myself just not completely bottom out, and I think it's been working so far, I think. So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing for me.
Awesome. This is one that I'm particularly looking forward to coming back to in the future, because it's a very snapshot of right now.
Yeah.
So that's a question that I was excited for you to answer, and I'm happy about you answering that and sharing that with us. What is my next question?
Yeah, your next question here that I have is for you personally. Like, why is it important that you help create a dialogue when talking about mental health?
I think that it is easy in some ways. So this kind of gets towards the end of my last answer, but I think we're definitely at a point in like society's trajectory where it's okay to be like, I've had depression before, or I have depression right now. And that as a larger concept is something that's okay. But it is, like I was saying before, like the minutia or like the nuances of what those struggles actually look like from the inside that are what help people understand and empathize with what it is like to have a mental health struggle. And everybody's struggles are different, and you may have different diagnoses or no diagnoses, but be going through something. Everybody's got kind of a different view from Yikesland. And I think that's very true, but there's a lot of commonalities. And I think that the more we create a dialogue that is really open and honest and sort of honest about the bad parts and the good parts and the neutral parts and the horrifying parts, the more that people who are having these struggles will feel better about having the struggles. Like, it doesn't make it not hard, but it makes you feel like, okay, I'm really not the only freak in the universe that is suffering from this. And then for people who don't have some of these struggles, that they can kind of understand more intimately what it might be like. If you think about like, I think we as a society are really into watching documentaries these days. And I think that's awesome, because documentaries a lot of the time will provide like a really in-depth view on like what it is like to be in a situation that's different than you are in right now. And that's kind of the point of storytelling, and that's, I think, what all creators and artists seek to do is like provide a different perspective. And so I think in a way, giving voice to this perspective is valuable, not only to people who are going through this stuff, but also to help people who have no other way of understanding what it's like, to get a glimpse of what it's like, so that it just becomes sort of, because you're gonna go through hard times or depressions or anxieties or whatever, but it makes it just a little bit easier if you don't have that added level of shame. So I guess, to me, I've gotten to this point in my life where it is now funny to say, I literally used to not be able to brush my hair because I was too depressed. And now I got like, my hair was super tangled and like a rat's nest, and other people had to detangle it for me. And at the time that felt so shameful, but I've said it out loud now so many times to so many people that there's no shame at all there for me anymore. It's just something that happened. It's just something that I had to go through. And I want that for everybody. I want everybody to feel like it is hard to go through what you're going through, but it is also okay, and you shouldn't feel bad about it at all. And I want us all to kind of be able to be chill. Like, Yikesland can still exist, but if we can all be chill about Yikesland, it's not so yikes anymore.
That's a good quote. All right. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay.
Well spoken.
Are you ready?
Oh boy. I don't know.
So I'm actually going to do a fun one now.
Oh, yay.
What is your favorite quote or lyric or, whatever, from that encapsulates a view from Yikesland right now, and why?
Oh, okay. All right, so this is a little peek behind the curtain. There were a couple set of questions that we did end up revealing to each other, simply because of the research that might need to go into it, because of remembering this offhand. For me, one of my favorite quotes. I've always appreciated like the work of like Robin Williams. And everyone, for people who don't know about Robin Williams, like, I mean, him being gone, like I miss seeing him in movies and stuff like that. And he dealt with mental health issues as well, and that's what led to his passing. And he had some great like monologues in like movies and a bunch of different like just Oscar worthy things that he said. One of my favorite quotes was from the Dead Poet Society, and it's the one where he tells them, carpe diem, and seize the day, because I felt like that was always like a great quote. But another one that I really enjoy and that I feel like is kind of always a little bit overlooked because it's not everyone enjoys the movies very often is the movie Jack. And that is the one where he plays a boy who has kind of like a disease where you age rapidly, so he ends up looking like an older man as he continues, and he's like only 10 or something like that. And there's a graduation speech that happens at the end of the film, and he gives a speech and he talks about life being fleeting, and that you don't always have time to always worry about everything that's going on, and try to enjoy the present, kind of thing. That was always one of my favorite like quotes at the end of the film. I guess I think I have it actually here. Let me see. I sorry if I'm gonna like yes, I do have it. I pulled it up earlier. The quote is, "Life is fleeting, and if you're ever distressed, cast your eyes to the summer sky. When the stars are strung across the velvety night, and when a shooting star streaks through the blackness, turning night into day, make a wish and think of me. Make your life spectacular." I think that was always a great cap off to that film. And I always felt like, yeah, that was something that I always wanted to like think about, where it's like, that's a great quote to think about, like wanting our lives to be, spectacular, and wanting to not get out of our heads and like the noise that's happening in here. And I always enjoyed that quote there. And the final thing I actually have, that when you had told me this, that right away came into my mind, I have a song that I enjoy listening to a lot, and the song's called Amy, aka Spent Gladiator 1 is what it's called, and it's by the Mountain Goats. If anybody, it's an indie band. And this one here, I think, for me, it's one of my favorite songs. And a quick excerpt from the song here is, "Do every stupid thing that makes you feel alive. Do every stupid thing to drive the dark away. Let people call you crazy for the choices that you make. Climb limits past the limits. Jump in front of trains all day. And stay alive. Just stay alive." And so, that is one of my favorite quotes from that song there, and I listen to that song constantly because I feel like it's one of those songs that kind of really encapsulates like trying to stay alive in like the world that we're in, but also try and still be ourselves. And I think that's, for me, those are some of my just absolutely favorite quotes. And maybe I'll have other ones when we get to ask this question later on down the line, because those are the ones that stood out for me at this moment in time.
Okay, thank you for that. I will also have to watch. I have not seen either of the movies you mentioned. Somehow.
No, you haven't?
Yes, which I know is socially unacceptable. But
no, they're great. They're great films, classic films. If you haven't seen Dead Poet Society, really great stuff. And then Jack, wonderful film. And then the song. Listen to the song. Yeah, it's good stuff.
I'll do it.
Yeah, do it. All right. So I have a question for you. Alrighty. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay, so... all right. Looking right now, what is one thing that you want to keep from this time in your life?
So I think that what I want to keep from this time in my life is very much informed by, I guess, or is similar to the question that I asked you about what's the biggest kind of like progress I had struggled with. I was originally going to use the word accomplishment, and then I was like, that doesn't really make sense because our mental health journeys are not like, boom, checked that off, like done with that one, never going to feel those feelings again.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it kind of in a way, it's me looking to hold on to a progress that I've made or a quote unquote accomplishment that I feel that I've made. And so for me, the thing that I want to keep from this time in my life is something that I've been holding on to for a while, but that I would like to hold on to forever, constantly. And it's the feeling of strength that I get from having survived what was at that time the darkest time in my life and the worst possible thing that I like, something that was worse in my mind than I could ever imagine. And I'm not a person that wants to like compare different people's suffering, but for me in the course of my life, that was for sure the worst thing that had ever happened to me. And having had it already happen and having it been such a thing that I didn't expect, like I did not expect the level of darkness and tunnel vision and solitude that I would feel within that period of depression, and having just sat there in the darkness and been half waiting to die and half like, I guess if I just sit here forever, at the end I'll either die or like come out of it somehow. And having come out of it, even though the most I could possibly do, I couldn't even struggle to get out of it anymore at a certain point. I was literally just, the best I could do was sit there and not do anything and wait for time to pass and hope that my brain would get better. And it did. That the feeling of strength that I get from having come out of that alive is something that I never ever want to lose. I think I spent a lot of my life, and I still spend a lot of my life, feeling afraid of everything. And that's probably anxiety and just other like existential crises. But I don't feel anymore this like sort of dread or lack of bravery. I'm like, this is exactly, something horrible happened and it shaped me, and I love that it shaped me, and I want it to continue to shape me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that I want to keep, is just this feeling that I can now do anything I want in the world and go through anything because I did that, and nothing can ever take that away. I did that and I survived that, and I feel like even future sufferings that are worse than I could possibly imagine, I can make it through whatever. And so that's what I hope to take with me, is just the strength from that scar.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I am going to ask you another meta question.
Oh, okay.
Which is, what has been your favorite episode of the podcast today?
Oh, favorite. I have well, all of them have been my favorite because it's being able to be with you and talk about this weird depression thing we're going through. But if I had to choose an episode that I think stands out to me the most, it would have to be the anxiety episode. I think that episode really stood out to me because one of my favorite things about this Yikesland and the podcast we've been going through is finding out the things that we really relate on, and then some of the things that we really are like, oh, that's very different. That's something I'm not going through. And us finding out like our social anxieties, especially when we talked about like social anxieties, how different we are in our reactions to different like social things that happen to us, where for you have a problem, the social anxiety when you're with a singular person. But in a large group, you're able to handle it. And for me, it's the opposite. I switch it up where I could talk to someone all day one on one, but then when you add another person, I was like, oh, and so I thought it was really great when we had like talked about it, and when we were on the podcast, and just us like, that's so different from what I'm going through, but still being able to relate to it at a good pace. And I think that for me, that's one of our really great episodes. That, and just us, I mean, a couple like just with moments throughout the podcast of just us realizing that we have experienced some of them like very similar things, like us finding out that we both made tiny sandwiches was the best thing in the world. Where it's like, you made tiny sandwiches too, but mine were a little bit different. Mine were like smashed kind of, and yours like mine were cut into that was something where it was great. And again, this podcast here is all about kind of just us being what we're going through personally. Each one of us going through it's all unique to ourselves, and our stories and our backgrounds and things that we're going through is uniquely ours. But at the end of the day, the key thing is that you're not alone. There's stuff to relate and glean off of everybody's experience, and that's one of the best things about this podcast for me. And those have been some of the great moments for me.
I think that's awesome, and I will just say really quickly that I think that one of the things that I really appreciate is about you and doing this podcast with you is that you are so excited to find out stuff that is different from you within within Yikesland. Because I think for a lot of people, when they hear something that they don't identify with, they're like, immediately there's an emotional distancing where they're like, yeah, I'll listen to this because this person's my friend, but like, I don't feel that. So like, I'm a little bit checked out. And you and I are both people that really lean in when we hear something that's different than we've ever felt. And we're like, oh my God, a different? Tell me more about the different. Tell me more. Like, I want to grab all these experiences. And I think it's probably a little bit of like a creator artist thing though. And I don't mean to make this comment sound so snooty, but people who are really interested in other people and characters and movies and stuff like that, like always want to know more about different types of human experiences. But that's something I really value about you, because I think that leads to good empathy. So
yeah. Well,
alrighty. What is?
Shall we go on to your next question? All right. So let's see here. I've been asking you some hard ones for a little bit. Let's go with the fun one here. We both find humor in our mental health, struggles. For you, like, what is it that you find humorous about, like, the Yikesland that we're in and we're dealing with? What is it? Where's the humor that you find out of it?
So I, first of all, love this question. But the thing that is so humorous about it is, my favorite type of humor is absurdity and like contradiction and the reversal of expectations. And I feel like being in Yikesland or having depression or other mental health struggles is like very exactly the definition of comedy. And I think in a lot of ways, to me, that it's just a physical manifestation of something hilarious. Like, it's not necessarily that depression seems funny, it's that it is by definition funny to me. And I don't mean that in a way where I'm trying to make light of the struggles that happen or how dangerous it can be, because it can be dangerous for a lot of people. It's been dangerous for me, but at the same time, there's so much stuff that's so silly about it. Having like I was saying in my answer before, having trouble doing stuff that is so easy for other people or was easy for you before, and then being really good at some other stuff that like other people struggle with that's super easy for you because you're depressed is like such a reversal of the way that we are taught that life is quote unquote supposed to be. That it's really funny. And we've talked in previous episodes about how much it means to me to find other people who also like making jokes about depression. And we've always talked about one of my favorite jokes, which is I either saying, I'm glad I didn't kill myself before I
Blank.
saw this dog on the street or whatever.
Which I wholly expect to see so many more.
Yeah, and that's a thing that I genuinely feel. I'll genuinely be like, oh my God, thank God I stayed alive in order to eat this bag of Cheetos.
Yes.
And it'll be such a small thing that means so much to me that when I was in the depths of the Great Depression, I like couldn't imagine what other good stuff there would be on the other side. And so knowing now what all the silly little good things are and how the stuff that really keeps us alive is just a bunch of tiny things all piled on top of each other day after day, a bunch of tiny sandwiches. That's so absurd to me, because you think that there's going to be like one really clear, like, this is the meaning of life, and like, here's why you have, like, some people go through their whole lives never having to wonder, why should I stay alive? And the absurdity of having depression is you literally do have to think like, what are the reasons that I should stay alive? And then a lot of times the reasons are not like super moral. A lot of the times the reasons are literally like, I want to see this movie that's coming out next week. That's what keeps you alive. That's ridiculous. But I love it. And so it's like the sheer absurdity of what it is, what your brain does to you and what it is like inside Yikesland that is like the very definition of humor to me. And so I think that I would not be nearly as funny as I am, but also I would not really have the appreciation for comedy that I do if it wasn't like half darkness, half light. And so I think it's just something that is two sides of the same coin, that in order for you to see like the light in the world, you have to have also seen the darkness.
Yeah.
So it's almost not that I think that things are funny about Yikesland. It's that I think from Yikesland derives my entire sense of what is comedic.
Well spoken. Thank you so much.
Okay. Are you ready?
I hope so.
So I'm going to go a little more serious now that I've asked you a couple fun ones. And this is one that you do not know is coming. Okay. But I would like for you to answer, how do you stay positive? Because I think positivity is something that we talked about in the podcast before, and that I think is particularly important to you. Not necessarily that it's not important to me, but it's something that I see you talk about a lot. I see you focus on a lot. All of the messages that you send and your social media posts. I think that that's like a very common refrain. And obviously Yikesland is a super dark place. So kind of where do you draw the positivity from? I know why it's important to you, but where do you get it from?
So the positivity that so my idea when it comes to positivity is I think that positivity can help a lot. And I think that there's a lot that you can use it as a very great tool in your struggles with like mental health. And I think that it helps, there's a difference between having positivity and having none at all. And I believe it does help. And for me, the idea of positivity and the things that I put out into the world, it comes from the idea of, I want to believe that there is goodness in the world. I want to, because there is so much dark. There is so much dark out there in the world. There's so much dark in my head, and inside, that I see. And I know that everyone else is, who's in Yikesland deals with the same thing. Everyone deals with their storms and their darkness that they have, and it looms over them. And for me, putting positivity out there is putting goodness into the world, because if I didn't do it, then it would make me believe, and in my head, that no one else is doing it either, so I want to believe that me doing it gives me hope that there are other people who are also doing it as well, and if I can do it, then other people can as well. And so I try to strive for that as much as I can, with everything that's going on in my head and everything that's going on personally, and things that are going, and the complete destruction of everything that like has happened to me in like my life. I still want to believe that if I can put goodness into the world, if I can put this positivity into the world, other people are as well, and people who are dealing with the same thing that I'm dealing with are also doing it as well, and can as well, because we've talked about it plenty of times on the podcast before, but the thing that we can do, the easiest thing that we do is help others, and we have the worst time trying to help ourselves. And so I want to believe that if I put this positivity in the world, if I put this goodness out in the world, it's helping someone out there, and then in turn, hopefully, that I can find someone who's going to send the positivity to me as well. And that's what I believe. Hopefully that helps.
That's a really beautiful answer.
Well, thank you. All right. So I have this one's also going to be kind of a hard one for you. All right. So this is one I did let you know, but I think it's a difficult question to answer. So for you, what is your definition of being happy?
So this question I knew was coming, and I knew I would not have a good answer for it, and I still don't.
Which is fine.
I think that I don't know what happiness means. That sounds really dark. So like contentment is different than happiness, and kind of what I'm going for and what I have right now in my life is contentment, where like I'm for sure, like there was a time in my life where it was not a for sure that I would be alive the next day, but now I will for sure be alive the next day. I'm like, no worries. Like I may be having a miserable internal brain thing, but like I'm just going to camp here. I'm going to camp here, and it is terrible, but I'm still going to camp here. But I think that the next step for me is to kind of make my life look different in a way that I could be happy. But the reason I haven't done that is because I don't know what that looks like. And it doesn't even necessarily mean make my life look like it on the outside, because it's not necessarily true that you need to, at least for me, that I need to fix like the structure of things. It's sort of more the structure inside my brain and like the way that I react to things, or what my expectations are, or where I derive like strength from, or social interactions. So I think that that's something that I haven't really rebuilt after the Great Depression. Like the city burned down and I rebuilt all the really critical stuff. Like I made the fire station and the police station and like a government building with like a couple bureaucrats in it. But I didn't really make like parks and beaches and stuff like that yet. And so this is a question that I struggled to come up with an answer to, and I couldn't really. And it's something that I hope does change the next time that we check in with ourselves and our past selves in the time capsule, because I think I don't really have a good sense of what being happy would look like. And maybe this is just what being happy is. Like maybe I'm already it and I just don't know it. But I have trouble determining what that even means. Like the words are foreign to me right now. And I guess that sounds sad, and I'm not really sad about it because I'm more proud of the progress that I have made, and I look forward to the progress I'm making in the future. But this is definitely a question that I'm really looking forward to coming back to and hoping to have an answer to, because right now the honest truth is that I do not know what that looks like.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So my next question for you, is going to be what has been, and this is a little bit more of a fun one again, because we're doing a roller coaster here, just like Yikesland. What has been your favorite? We talked about a lot of tips and tricks that we use and ask you guys for your tips and tricks. And so what has been your favorite tool that we've talked about on the podcast as far as like a weapon to use in Yikesland?
So yeah, the things that I think is, if you guys have been with us for an extended period of time, you will know my creation of the break glass in case of emergency plan in my head, and the idea of that came about where I started gleaming off of like relating to you and the things we were talking about, and understanding my need to break the cycle I was in where I constantly spiraled. And the idea of break glass in case of emergencies, if you guys don't know, that's the idea of like, I have a plan in set in case I know that I'm starting to spiral. This is what I'm going to enact. And I think the greatest tool and the greatest weapon I have against my mental health issues and my struggles that I deal with are like people like yourself, my friends, the people I'm close with, the people I've created the bonds with, because I think that they're like, my strength comes from those who I have surrounded myself with, I think. And I think that, being around everyone in my life who is also dealing with the things that I'm dealing with, or who can relate to them as well, and who are the people on like the emergency list of like, if I begin to fall, I need to reach out to them to see if I can be helped back up. And so I think my friends and the people who are close to me, I think, are my biggest weapon and my biggest strength that I have. And so that's what I have.
It's a really nice answer. Some of your answers have made me want to cry, I'm going to be honest with you. So that's good.
I'm crying inside. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that my answers are that powerful, I guess. So another question. I think this one. This one here is one that I want to ask you here. What is the biggest thing holding you back right now when it comes to your mental health struggles?
Oh boy. Okay. The biggest thing that is holding me back right now, I have talked about episode after episode, and I have not succeeded in changing this. And I've also talked about it with my therapist, and I continue to have this issue, and it's very frustrating. And I totally have faith that I'll figure it out someday, but it's something that I've been struggling with for a really long time. And it is that I fundamentally do not believe that I have worth except for like productivity and what I can do for other people. And so like, in a way, and this maybe came from the Great Depression, and in all honesty, this maybe came from the fact that I'm like, if you were willing to throw your life away, you don't own it anymore. That now I think that the only times that I am worthy of existing are when I'm like getting stuff done, either for work or for a project or cleaning at home, or doing stuff that affects and is in service of others. And that sounds like it might be a beautiful thing, like, what a wonderful, selfless human being. But it's actually a really unhealthy way to live, because I don't, and this I guess ties into the happiness answer, I don't fundamentally believe that I deserve happiness, or that I deserve for people to love me, or that I deserve to be treated well. In and of myself, I believe that I only deserve that stuff if I like do the correct actions. And this is something that I've kind of known about myself and like been pointing out over the course of the podcast. And that my therapist has also said it and been like, so this is a problem, right? And the reason that I think it holds me back is because in a way, I'm not ever acting for myself then. In a way, I am constantly only acting in order to day by day, quote unquote, deserve to be alive. And I don't apply this standard to anybody else. I don't think that you need to cross off certain actions or do stuff for me in order for you to be alive or any of you guys to be alive. It's like a horrible thing that I only apply to myself. But I think it creates a lot of complexes too, where because I'm not really acting for myself, I'm not being the real me all of the time, and I'm not doing what the real me would do. And I'm sort of obscuring even the opportunity for there to be a real me because I'm just desperately trying to like please myself as far as productivity only. And I think that that's something that if I removed this standard from myself, I would feel so much more free and so much more deserving, and I would seek better things for myself, and sort of like have healthier standards. And I don't know why I can't change this, and I'm trying to change it. And so this is another question that I hope when we check back that I've made some progress on, but that is my biggest struggle right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. So my next question for you is, how do you feel about yourself right now at this moment in time?
Okay. How do I feel about myself at this moment in time? I don't think it's any secret, but I don't necessarily like myself, guys. I don't. I'm not very kind to myself. I'm very self-destructive. It's whenever I make decisions or anything like that, I've talked about it before, where I'm very self-destructive in my decision making and the things that I do to myself, because I end up thinking like, I deserve this. This is what I deserve, and I don't have any great feelings about myself. I know this is it's not a great answer, but I don't like myself. I don't like who I am. I don't necessarily think I deserve much of anything. But I want to keep that hope and that positivity up, because I want to believe that I don't deserve just this hate that I have for myself, and this darkness that I deal with, and it's not easy, and it's not an easy answer for me to say, but I as much as I want to move past this, move past what I'm dealing with, and it's been with me as much as I can remember. I don't. I hope this changes when we ever check in, but I don't feel anything towards myself at all. Yeah, that's all I got.
Okay.
Yeah, let me go into your next question here. Let's see here. This is one you don't know that it's coming. For you, we were talking. I mean, it's kind of. I mean, we talked about like how we view ourselves and things like that, and how we see ourselves. If you were to think about it and look at yourself, and how would you describe yourself to someone?
Oh boy, that is difficult.
I'm not talking physically. I'm talking about how would you describe yourself to somebody?
I think that I seem like Like a fake person. So I've had a friend describe me as a sitcom character before, and I feel like a lot of that makes total sense to me. Um, I have, and this sort of goes back to my previous answer. After the Great Depression, I rebuilt a lot of the structural stuff that I needed in order to function. But then there's like clearly some other stuff that's missing and some like key motivations that are missing. And so in some ways I feel like a sitcom character that's not super well fleshed out, where it's not always clear like why I'm doing what I'm doing. Like there's not a good reason behind it. I think I'm a person who, and not to, I don't want to sell myself short. I think I'm a person who feels a lot of empathy for people. I think that that is my superpower, I guess.
Yeah.
I feel a lot of empathy for people, and that doesn't mean I'm perfect at it, of course. I'm just a human being, but I think that empathy is really important, and I try to focus on that and I try to cultivate that, and that's one of my main motivators in life. But at the same time, I don't really have any motivators that come from me and my own desire to have my own happiness. And so, in that way, I kind of seem like a character that somebody wrote poorly, that is only reacting to the external environment and fails to like have sort of an internal driving motivation or thing that they are going for because of just them. And so I kind of, a lot of times I feel, I don't think this is how anyone else would describe me, but how I would describe me is like a not fleshed out character.
Okay.
So that's my answer to that.
Okay.
That was a fun one, though.
That's good. All right. Shall I anticipate the next one?
So I will ask you now, and I accidentally said the word from this next question in my answer. But okay. What do you think that your Yikesland superpower is? If you were to be like a character or a superhero living in Yikesland, what is your superpower within the context of this world?
Oh man. I think that for me, I think it's being, this kind of relates to some of the answers that I gave already and also kind of like stems off yours, but I think feeling for others, the empathy that I feel for others, I think is probably like the greatest thing that I have. I mean, we've talked about that. Like I can feel the emotion from somebody and glean it off of them very well because I can empathize with someone very well. And I think that my greatest strength with that is that I feel like I can relate to them, and I feel like that I have this kind of power to kind of like be positive, I guess, and help as much as I can. I think that my power is that as much as I can't be there for myself, I can be there for someone else. I think that's probably the biggest thing that my power, I guess, that I can, as much as I'm don't want to be there for myself and I don't want to, like myself, I feel like the best thing I know how to do is be there for somebody. I can listen and I can help as much as I can help myself.
Okay. I like that answer.
Oh, right. Your turn. Let's go with this one here. About Yikesland. Doing the podcast and it's been a process, but what is the best thing about Yikesland to you, and what is the worst thing about Yikesland to you?
Okay. So we'll start with the worst thing, which is listening to myself talk, or like hearing myself talk, or seeing myself talk. I hate. And I know that this is a very common thing for people to experience, like super common for you to not like the sound of your own voice. Super common for like actors, for example, to not want to watch themselves acting. But that's the thing that is the worst to me, is I already have a lot of social anxiety. I'm already very critical of myself all the time. I'm already a person that if you wrote down a transcript of everything I say all the time, I would pick apart that transcript and be like, here's all the stupid stuff that you said that you should have said better. You're an idiot. So I already have all of those things like working against me. And so listening to myself talk and being like, why did you say it that way? Why did you stutter here? Why is your tone like that? Why aren't you more eloquent? Is definitely the worst thing. Even I hate the way I move my mouth or when I blink or how I move my body. And that's okay. You know what I mean? Like I say, it's the worst thing. And yet it is, it's like fine, I guess, because I think that and I guess maybe I should have said this for one of the other answers, but I've said it before in previous podcasts. I think that because I can talk about this stuff, I should talk about it. I think that I have the obligation to do that work or be part of doing that work because I can. And so while I very much hate looking at myself and listening to myself, and I'm super uncomfortable with it, and I'm constantly worried about saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing, I think it's important anyway. And this actually goes back to what I was trying to say before about like what's the most humorous thing about depression or living in Yikesland is that to me the hardest part of doing this podcast isn't being super open and talking about my like issues in front of potentially anybody because this is on the internet. That's chill to me. Being like, oh yeah, I used to not be able to take a shower and that could happen to me again. And today I couldn't get out of bed like a normal person. I'm like, saying that stuff in front of everyone is fine. But you know what's hard? Looking at the way my mouth moves. I'm like, that's absurd. That's ridiculous. So that makes me laugh. But I think that the best part of doing the podcast is, in addition to the fact that I'm doing it because it's hard, and in addition to its difficulty, and so that's like a cool strength. I think the best part has been the community and hearing from people in person, either friends that we wouldn't necessarily have had these conversations, or even people that I did not know were struggling with these issues that have come out and been like, hey, I listened to your podcast, or even just what's your podcast about? And then when I tell them what it's about, they're like, oh, that's something I struggle with too. And just increasing the number of those conversations, whether they are deep or whether they are shallow, whether they're just like, oh, I have anxiety too. Oh, I have depression too. Oh, I'm on medication too. Or whether people really want to get into it. The best part is that we're all talking about it a little bit more. I've talked about how important it is to me that even though it wasn't like we weren't allowed to talk about it, doing the podcast has brought my dad and I a lot closer as far as us talking about mental health stuff. So like all the million little ways that we try to help foster community or discussions, or even just people acknowledging like, hey, I'm going through this too. Hey, thanks for talking about it. And I really appreciate them sharing stuff with me. It's all of that stuff, all of those little tiny normalizations that have been super awesome. That makes me really happy, and it makes me feel like maybe I am doing the right thing, even though I don't want to see how my mouth moves.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So my next question for you is now a dark question.
Oh boy.
But what do you think when you think about your depression? You know, you have a history with this, and I'm sure that there's lots of memories there. What memory stands out the most to you?
Okay. What memory stands out the most to me about my depression? So the memory that the ones that stand out to most to me are the ones where I self-destructed, where I and ended up spiraling pretty bad. The memory of like the me breaking the bonds of like between my family and friends and things like that because of things I'm going through, and just a belief that like it'd be easier for them if I wasn't, connected with them. I've done that. It's a big regret for certain bonds that I've broken with friends and certain people in my past. But that's probably like the biggest thing that stands out to me, and just biggest memory that really stands out is a memory that I have where I was working and just going through my normal day, and sitting at a computer doing my normal job that I do, which is just data collection and things like that, and just stopping for a second and then just having just darkness feels like it washes over me, and just having these tears roll down my face, and I just feel so the idea of just like feeling so isolated, and then leaving from there and then coming back to emptiness, and then looking at myself as I would where I don't have any feeling towards myself, and um, having that idea of maybe today's the day where it just ends, and where I think that, I just take a rope or something and just tie it together and just finish it and just end it off. And it's the biggest memory that really stands out to me because it's where I became the closest to doing something that we talk about here that we don't want everybody to be doing at all. And this was like way before, and this is before the podcast, and this is where my greatest strength from this podcast is that I pulled myself from that edge, being here with with you and talking about it, relating it, and being with you guys here in Yikesland has put me in a spot where I don't want to believe that I should just end. I want to believe that like every Tuesday we're here because we should be here. And so that's probably the biggest memory that stands out to me.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure. Next question for you?
Yes.
Let's see here. The next question I want to ask you here is I'm going to ask you the question of right now we're taking a snapshot in time with what we're doing. This is one you don't know what's coming. We take a snapshot in time about like what's going on right now in our lives, and we're asking these questions. For you, if we were to jump ahead a year, where do you see yourself?
Oh boy. I would hope that I would be so I always talk about like life is not linear. And your progress isn't always going to be linear, and you shouldn't blame yourself if you are quote unquote slipping back or you feel like, oh, I'm spinning in circles right now and stuff like that. But at the same time, I would hope to see myself with a better sense of self, and feel a little bit more grounded with regards to, even if I'm not like, hey, I know what happiness looks like, I think I'm totally worthy of everything. If I'm just taking a couple of steps towards that kind of thing, I think that a lot of things start to look better for me. I would also, though, like to see myself be get stuck less. I think a lot of times I have struggles with like procrastination and concentration, which I've talked about before in the podcast, and issues with perfectionism, where even though one of the greatest lessons that I've learned just super recently is that done is better than perfect. That doesn't mean that because I learned that lesson, like check it off, I don't struggle with it. I mean, I've learned that lesson, like I get that it's true now. And so I can like work backwards and make myself finish something even if it isn't perfect. But I would hope that I would see less of those those are not really existential struggles to me, but those are things that impact my life on a daily basis. As far as getting things done and just like living my life work. And I think that if I didn't have as many of those issues, I would have a little bit more time too for like self-care and introspection and hobbies like running or having a dog and stuff like that. So I think that or even just, you know, doing like CBT or DBT or other mental health work. So in a year, I would like to see not only progress in the things that I've already talked about, but progress in just like that day-to-day ability to like structure your day and concentrate and do time management that I've for sure come a long way in. And I think I'm relatively good at compared to how I used to be and compared to a lot of people, I'm sure. But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff there that's not quite working for me. And like, that's one of the biggest things that I would like to see myself make progress on in a year.
Okay. Surprise! This has part 2.
Oh my God. Okay.
This is the second part
excited.
to this question.
Oh, what?
With what you just answered right there.
Yeah.
Does that mean, do you believe that means you've gotten better?
At
with,
all
you know,
that stuff.
no, does that mean that you're better as like mental health wise?
Wait, like if I did all those things, would I be better?
The things that you believe that you're going to accomplish in a year, right? That you've said right now, does that mean for you that you've gotten mental health wise better?
Okay. So
does that relate to
the word better to
and
me?
Quote unquote.
Yes.
Better.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just gonna go.
And that's why I want to break you. Yeah. So I want you to break it down.
So
first.
Break it down. I'm gonna regret watching that later. Break it down. Double down on it. The word better is super loaded, and so
that's why I asked it. And I want you to break it down.
I love that you used it because I don't believe that you hit a state, and this is why in my question to you, I didn't want to use the word accomplishment or accomplished because I don't think that you sort of ever get, at least for me and from what I've seen, that there's a state called better where you're like mentally perfect all of a sudden. I think that even people who don't struggle with or who don't say that or don't have the diagnosis or don't feel like they struggle with depression and anxiety and whatever, I think it's really a spectrum. And so a lot of things that I would describe as anxiety, some people experience some of those things and they think that that's just like a normal part of their life, and that's totally fine. But it means that there's not really a state that you're going to get to where you're like, and now I'm good, because life's going to keep throwing stuff at you. And at the same time, there are some paths that you tread in your brain over and over again that then are kind of always going to exist. And so even if you don't, I don't want to say slip back into it, but even if you don't feel those things at the moment, they're kind of still there and they're kind of still a part of you. And I think that's great because you may have learned from them and they may have shaped you into who you are, on how strong or empathetic or loving or kind that you are. So I don't think that those are quote unquote scars in a bad way. But at the same time, I think that means that there isn't a, okay, look, I'm better now, like ding, everything's perfect. At the same time, I would say that compared to, and I always use this as my baseline, but compared to the Great Depression, I am better now. And I don't mean better like I don't need any care. I would still consider medication if that was something that I talked to a medical professional about and that they thought it was a good idea and I thought it was a good idea and I was willing to do. And that's not a place that I'm at right now, but it's something that I would definitely consider. I'm also in therapy now. So obviously I believe that there's still work to be done or progress to be made. But like when I look at how things used to feel versus how they feel now, when I look at how functional I used to be versus how functional I am now, I do feel like, oh my God, I made so much progress because I'm happier now, or like less sad now, I guess is what I would say. And so in a way that is colloquially better, yes. So I think that if I'm looking a year out, and if I did if I did make a bunch of progress on a lot of those things, I would consider that even better in a relational sense, but I wouldn't consider myself to be better in like a cured sense, because for me that doesn't necessarily exist, and that's okay, because I don't need it to exist in order for me to want to make progress and kind of like set up a happier, kinder, more loving world for myself. Because it's not linear, and that's okay, and that's awesome, but you try, because trying is the most important thing to me.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's the full question, in case like later on someone like looks at this. The full question was, where do you see yourself in a year's time? And does that mean, quote unquote, that you're better, right? And so like that was the full question, but I wanted to space that like part, because it was kind of like I needed the answer first and then like see it down. Sure. And I used the word better because I wanted to have you break it down, because I know. I think that you have you excel at breaking things down. So thank you for that.
Okay, so my question for you is actually it's a little bit, it's related, but it is not necessarily a year from now, just in terms of your life. A lot of times we talk about the concept of being better, the concept of being cured, if there is that, or the concept of recovery, which I think is a really useful word in a lot of situations with addiction or with eating disorders. So that's a word that I use a lot. But I've heard you also say sort of like a sustainable or a stable situation. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to ask you, what does recovery, or your interpretation of better, or your interpretation of a livable level, what does that look like to you?
Oh boy.
And that is hard, I know.
I love this question. Yes, I've used the phrase that I don't. One of the key things I believe wholeheartedly when it comes to my mental health and with depression in general is, I don't believe in the word completely cured or anything like that. I think that eventually, like, it's always going to be there, just like I describe it as kind of like a wound, that you have this wound and eventually it heals, but there's always going to be a faint scar sometimes, and it'll be there, and sometimes you may not notice it, but I feel like it's my best metaphor for it, where it's always going to be there, it's always going to be with you, and it's always, you'll come with the memories of how it affected you, and it will have altered you in some way. A sustainable and steady like level of living for me, it's very hard for me to picture it because of where I am, but the idea of, I don't want to not feel anything about myself, right? Like not in that way. I said it wrong. I don't want to not feel nothing about myself. You know what I mean? If I'm saying it correctly. Am I saying it correctly? I feel like I'm saying it correctly. I want to get to a sustainable level where I can end up liking who I am. And for me, that's my sustainable level, where I may end up still having this, storm that I deal with, and I may end up still having to deal with it and try and keep myself on a steady level and a normal livable level. But I want, for me, to be able to look at myself and feel love, I guess. And I want to understand that what we've done here with the podcast and creating this dialogue and talking with everyone else who we've talked about who can relate to us, I would hope that like the things we've done helps other people as well. and it makes people understand like what we're trying to do here. And for me, with like knowing that like I won't have a sustainable level, just like and won't relate to everyone else's sustainable level, but for me, the basis that I want to be able to. I want to be able to carpe diem. I want to be able to seize the day. I want to be able to look at life and not look at it as if it was an obstacle. I want to look at it as if it was this podcast where we look forward to it. So that's my answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So the question that I have for you, and actually, how many more do you have?
Probably one maximum.
Okay. So the penultimate question that I have for you right now, because I have one more after this, and that'll be the final one. But I used it correctly, right? The penultimate is the one before the final, right?
I dig it.
The penultimate question that I have for you is, in your day-to-day life, and in your life currently, what do you appreciate the most about your life?
This one is easy for me. It is the people that I know love me for me and that I can count on, and that even when I don't see the good in me, they for some reason see the good in me. And that's like, it's still crazy to me. Because of the thing where I fundamentally don't believe that I deserve love, I sort of, it doesn't make any, like, I'm like, it's very irrational that these people think well of me. Like, I'm like, someday they're going to figure out that I'm terrible. And like, I'm just waiting for that to happen. And so in some ways, like, there's a part of me that sort of doesn't trust the nice things that people feel about me or say, or like the ways that people say that I have impacted them. But at the same time, that doesn't mean I don't appreciate, and I still do appreciate. And it's the thing that I appreciate the most is the people that I have around me, yourself included, that I think see and point out the good in me, even when I don't, or especially when I don't. And it's not anybody else's responsibility to like shower me with compliments and make me feel better. And in a way, it only makes me feel better in a temporary way, because of that thing where I fundamentally am like, all their compliments are a lie though, because I am a trash person. But at the same time, it does make me feel better. And like, sort of the more it happens, the more it normalizes me thinking that, yeah, there might be some good stuff about me. And so that's what I appreciate the most in my life right now, because I think that it's going to be one of the keys to me learning to think that I am worthwhile. And that maybe seems weird, like it maybe seems unhealthy, like I'm supposed to derive my worth from something inside of me that is inherent. But at the same time, you know what? If I'm going to learn this lesson backwards, as long as I'm going to learn it, that's okay. And so that's what I appreciate the most, is just people who I know have my back, even when I make mistakes or I'm not able to be there for them 100% of the time because I have a limited amount of emotional whatever. Just knowing that there are those people out there that are hoping, like, that are rooting for me and that will tell me that means so much to me, even if I sort of fundamentally can't understand why they love me.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. So I started this, which means this is my last question for you,
yes.
right? Okay.
Yes.
So this is one that you do not know about. And it's not necessarily a question. It's an exercise. But what I would like for you to do now is I think you spent a lot of time, you spent a little time talking about your superpower, and some of the stuff that's good about you or hopeful about you or positive. But you also spent a lot of time talking about feeling like you don't love yourself and you don't like yourself. So as an exercise, I would like for you to do now, I'd like for you to speak really kindly and lovingly and compliment yourself. So basically describe yourself, but as a person that loves you. And I want you to try to feel it for a second. But just say, describe yourself and say stuff about yourself, but say all of the good stuff, like you are very worthy, as an exercise, which I think will be really hard right now given some of the stuff that we've talked about, but which I hope the next time we do in this time capsule, I hope that it becomes a little bit easier. And so that's kind of what I hope that changes for you. I'm sorry, this one's really hard.
Oh boy. Guys.
Yeah, my last one's a zinger, so.
Oh, all right. Hold on. Coughing.
Therapy.
Okay.
You got it.
Okay. All right. All right. Jelani. This is Jelani talking. And I want you to know that you are kind. Your heart and the amount of goodness that you put into the world makes you worth being here. And the bonds that you've created with others they're not just tools. They are because of the amount of love that you can put into the world and the amount of love that you're able to give and take from others as well, makes you worth being here. And I want you to know that as much turmoil that is you, I want you to know that at the end of the day, I see you hurting, and I see that I haven't treated you great, but I do love you, and I don't want to hurt you, and I want you to be here, and I want you to know that you deserve to be here. I think that's all I got.
Okay. Thank you.
I think my final question is not going to be as emotional as that.
That's okay. We should end it less emotionally.
And I'm sorry.
I'm really proud of you.
I'm sorry about that. But
Yikesland is all about roller coasters.
It's a roller coaster episode, guys. I'm really glad about this. But so the final one that I have here is the one you know about. It's for someone that is dealing with, mental health struggles. What is the best advice that you can give them to help them through what they're going through and their struggles?
So I think that my perspective on how to give advice to somebody is obviously going to be very much shaped by my own experience. So I would want them to know that Yikesland is ridiculous, but I would want them to know that they're not alone, and that no matter how much you feel like you're the only person in the world who's ever felt this specific feeling, or that everybody else is doing better than you, or that it's shameful that you're going through whatever you're going through because you don't, quote unquote, have a good reason to be feeling the way that you're feeling. I would want them to know that it's completely okay to be feeling whatever ridiculous, absurd thing that you are struggling with. But at the same time, that someday it will probably seem silly to you. And I would want them to feel hopeful about that. And in a way, this is me giving advice to like my previous self. But I would want them to feel encouraged to talk to other people, to talk to the people that love them, even if they don't feel loved or that care about them, to talk to a therapist or a medical professional, or even to talk to themselves and write in a journal. I would want them to talk about it and to feel the feelings, even the ones that they're trying to run from, but also to recognize that feelings are not necessarily forever and that what you believe is the truth. Like right now, I believe the truth is that I don't deserve to be alive unless I get certain things done. And I know that that's ridiculous. And I haven't gotten to the next step of like not having that yet and being able to both get things done and think I'm worthy, but they're separate. And I have faith that that feeling is not forever, and that helps me keep going. And so I would want that person to also have faith that the thing that they're feeling right now is horrible and it's really hard, and they have every right to feel afraid. And at the same time, I would want them to have hope that things will change. And that even if the best that you can do is just sit here within your own suffering and just sit here, just still be here, because that keeps all your options open. That means that things can get better. You know, if you aren't here anymore, then of course things will never get better because that's just the end. But if you stay here, things can get better. And some days things getting better will mean that you made a tiny sandwich and it was delicious. And some days things getting better might mean that you adopt a dog and now you have some little pet that reminds you constantly that you're worthy of unconditional love. And all of those things are good, and all of those things are still worthy. And so I guess, I mean, in a way, I'm just saying you're not alone and it'll get better and all of that stuff. But I think a lot of times when you're feeling really bad, you're like, oh, those are just cliches. Like those don't really mean anything, and it's hard to make yourself feel them. And I would want that person to sit there and try at least for a second to feel that stuff, even if they can only feel it for a second, because that's at least another second that you are still here. Just keep living the next 20 minutes and the next 20 minutes and the next 20 minutes. And you deserve to be here, even if you don't think that you do. And that someday, if you keep sitting here, you will feel that again. That is my advice.
That's really great. Thank you so much for that. Well,
okay,
man,
it's been a roller coaster of an episode, guys.
This has been a roller coaster of an episode, and I love this episode.
This is my new favorite episode.
Yes. So, yeah, guys. So what we're gonna do is this is an episode that when it releases, we'll probably revisit it, but then there is going to be a period of time that is going to pass before we revisit these same exact questions. And we're not going to come back to this episode. We're going to promise each other we're not going to look at this episode very much. I mean, maybe when it drops and go through it with somebody, but after that, I think that there's going to be a space of time. And then when we do revisit these questions, we're going to compare and see what the difference is in our snapshots of our lives. So, any final thoughts on everything?
Well, I'm really grateful that you guys have been here with us on the following emotional roller coaster. I really enjoyed asking these questions, especially the ones I wasn't and getting these questions, especially the ones I wasn't expecting. What I kind of tried to do with this is Jelani and I had gotten together and told each other some of the questions that we should be expecting. But at the same time, even for the ones that I knew were coming, I kind of wanted myself to be speaking a little bit more honestly and a little bit more off the cuff as to my responses, so that they're a purer snapshot of what I'm feeling right now. And so I think this was really fun, but I think it's also in a way going to be kind of educational for us, and in a way has also been aspirational for us to talk about the things that are problems for us right now, that we're trying to work through. So if you guys have any thoughts on this, if you want to do your own exercise for your own time capsule or snapshot in your mental health journey, I think that's a fun exercise to do. And if you have other questions that you'd like us to answer in the future, we can kind of we're happy to do another episode or a mini episode where we answer those, either as just a communication thing or as another little time capsule. That would be fun.
I would love to do a viewer mail time capsule. That'd be amazing.
So I think this, like I said before, this is my new favorite episode. I think we went through a lot.
We went through a lot.
I feel so different than when I began.
Yes,
but,
I feel so different. Yeah.
But I'm really proud of you and some of the things that you have like said and confronted and done, even in the context of just this hour that we've been talking. Yeah. And I'm really grateful to be here with you, and that this is what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm grateful that you're here on this podcast, and the stuff that you talked about and breaking it down, and I appreciate your answers as well, and you've done confronting the ones that you confronted and like talking about the things that we needed that should be broken down, especially about ourselves. I think have been really great, so I do appreciate you, and I appreciate everyone being here with the support and your guys just being here with us. I can't say it enough that the goal for this was literally just us talking and just us seeing where this goes, and we're not, the aspiration was never to just like, oh, we're going to change the world, but I think the idea was for us to help each other. And if this podcast was ever listened to just only one person out there, we wanted to believe that one person was affected by it. And hopefully, this does help you guys in some way or relate to you guys in some way. So I want to close off with a quote, actually, that one that I didn't speak on because I didn't want to like bombard everybody with a bunch of quotes that I found. So there's a film that I love that is called Silent Voice. And there is a quote from it that I love a lot, and I think it means a lot, especially in what we deal with here. And this kind of like goes back to why we're doing this podcast, and it's all about talking. And the thing with our mental health struggles and the things we deal with, not talking is the most problematic thing that a lot of people can face up to, and the biggest step that you can take to try and getting to a more steady, and livable spot is that you start talking with anybody, because you may find out that there are more people who can support you and love you. So the quote that I actually have for the film is, back then, if we could have heard each other's voices, everything would have been so much better. And I think that goes, a simple quote, very small. Some people might even have it say it's a throwaway line, but I think that if you had started talking and if you took the step, I think that things would change, and you would find that it changed a lot more. I think us talking here has changed us and changed things that we talk about and things that we confront. And I think it's a strong phrase with it just being a simple sentence. So I appreciate you guys out there, and I love all of you. I love everyone. So thank you so much for being here. Want to close this off?
This was the episode that I first cried at. Hooray.
We got there.
We've been waiting for it this whole time. It only took 34 episodes. But no, I think that's a testament to, there's a lot of stuff that we talk about that's really hard and that I feel really deeply. But this one kind of hit me in the gut. And I always hope, but I hope especially with this episode that it means something to you guys. Just knowing that there's anybody listening means so much to me. It is wild to me that anybody wants to ever listen to me talk. Like, even you, who are my friend and who routinely says that you like to listen to what I have to say and that you care about what I say. And I hope you guys know that we care about you too. even if you don't say anything to us, and that we want to see you all in Yikesland forever. But we'll maybe build a couple more beaches and parks in here while we are here. But this episode has meant so much to me. This podcast means so much to me. Knowing that people are out there means so much to me. And it's not that we are like doing some crazy thing that nobody's ever done before, but we are trying to create a ripple effect. And so knowing that there are people out there that feel similar ways to how I feel means so much to me and helps keep me going. And I hope that we can all ripple each other.
It's a good phrase. It's a good quote. I love it.
But yeah, thanks for being here, guys.
All right, thank you.
This has been your host, Kris Fung, along with my co-host.
Loving you so much, Jelani Huynh. Bye-bye.
You are not alone. Help is available at the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255.